the UP, you don't have to look far to find something interesting. If you take a closer look, you might find things you didn't know were there.
If you look closely here, there's another amazing animal called a fairy shrimp.
Itching to get back in the boat? We'll take a quick trip to the Menominee River in search of browns.
Beautiful! That's what we're looking for.
9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. "906 Outdoors" is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours.
So we're in a swale wetland here right near Lake Superior, and this was created as the lake levels were gradually receding. So what we have here is we'll have long strings of wetland that are long and narrow, and then you'll get a ridge like the ridge behind us and this way too, and there's a series of 5 of them. And I put minnow traps in there to see what we can get. So if you put them in the right spot, you try to put them along a corridor, maybe along a dead log where you get things moving around. And it's just a way to see what's there. It's a good way to monitor our local environments. And here we have something. This is a predaceous diving beetle. These are among the top predators in these ephemeral pond ecosystems. So they can fly around pond to pond. They have the ability to fly, and they'll feed on salamanders and small frogs. I've even seen them eat fish. They have a long narrow beak that they use to pierce them, and they can. So sometimes when we get these in our traps, they'll actually consume the amphibians and the small fish they get trapped in there. They're pretty voracious predators. We don't give insects enough credit for being stealthy and effective predators, but they really are. They're some of the top predators in these pond ecosystems. It might just look like a stick to most folks, but this is actually a insect called a water scorpion. And it's a kleptoparasite. They steal food from other animals. You can see they have long front legs, kind of like a mantis. He'll use those to grab the prey and then pierce them with his sharp beak and then suck out the juices. Pretty neat animal, and just something you're not going to see unless you're trapping or you're dip netting. Another neat thing about the water scorpion too is they can actually take in water through their rear end. You see this big structure coming out of their rear end. They'll stick that up in the water, and they can live in mucky sediments that don't contain any oxygen. Here's another predator here. This is a dragonfly nymph. It's one of our pond dragonflies. You can see he's got his little wing buds on the back. And these have a really unique way of feeding. On the bottom side of the mouth, they have the structure called a labium this actually shoots out. So he'll shoot that structure out and grab the prey and then bring it right back to the mouth. It's a really unique way of feeding. And they also shoot water out of their rear end too. That's how they scoot around in the water real quick. They're mostly sit-and-wait predators. They're really well camouflaged. They'll just hang out in the vegetation, and when a small bug comes along, like a mosquito, this is an excellent predator. So right here we have a communal egg dump. So these are wood frog eggs, and they tend to lay all of their eggs in the same part of the pond. So they pick the sunniest part of the pond, and the females will basically all lay the eggs in the same area. They look like caviar. They actually feel really, really nice in the hand. So this is our first frog species to finish breeding. They'll start just as the spring peepers do, but after about 2 weeks, they're done. So at this site, these guys are pretty much done laying eggs, and these will hatch pretty soon. Within the next couple of weeks, they'll hatch, and then they'll probably emerge depending on the weather this year, late June to early August, depending on conditions. These are the eggs of the spotted salamander, one of our very first to come here and breed. So they'll lay the egg mass, and they'll deposit this jelly, and then as they lay it, the jelly will expand and take on water, so they end up becoming a lot larger than they originally were. You can see the little individual embryos. You can see an algae start to grow on the embryos. That's a kind of algae called salamander algae. They can withstand being out of the water for several days at a time, so this gelatinous coating around them keeps the embryos nice and moist. I've seen ponds that have dried up really early in the springtime and then had no water there for a week or more, and then they finally got rain, and they hatched and turned out just fine. So it's a pretty nice adaptation to changing conditions. That's where that algae starts to grow, and it can grow right inside of that jelly, and it provides oxygen for the growing embryos, and the algae get a place to reside during the process too. So it's thought to be a symbiotic partnership between the two species. When looking for salamander nests, I find these little tubers from bugleweed, Lycopus uniflorus, and they have quite a nice taste, kind of like a water chestnut. So a little bonus that you might get when you're looking for salamanders.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom.
So this is a water bowman. You can see how he gets his name. He has those legs that are kind of paddle-like. Another common pond inhabitant. And here is another kind of dragonfly larva. This is one of our darners. You recognize it by its really long abdomen. See that labium there. There's that labium structure that it uses to grab its prey. They have these large eyes too, so they're very visual foragers, hunters. Got a real alien-like face. So these are our largest kind of dragonfly, the darner. This is kind of a small nymph for this particular kind, but he'll probably emerge late in summer. So our dragonflies, they spend most of their lives as nymphs. They can be in the nymph stage for several years. And the adult stage doesn't last long at all. It's months. In some species, it's just a few weeks. So we think as dragonflies as animals that spend their time up in the air foraging for smaller insects, but really they're aquatic animals that spend very little of their lives flying around as we see them. We rarely get to see them how they spend the majority of their time. If you look closely here, there's another amazing animal called a fairy shrimp. You can see their red gills undulating through the water there. These are another species, a small crustacean, that is also specialized at living in these ephemeral ponds. The eggs will stay there throughout the dry part of the season, and they'll hatch early on in springtime in large abundances, and they're just feeding on detritus, dead plant material, but they're a pretty amazing animal that you only find in this ephemeral pond habitat. And these guys, they only come out in spring. They last for a few weeks. If you come here later on in May, they'll probably be all gone. They'll go through their cycle and lay their eggs and be out of the system. Yeah, one thing I just noticed here, which is pretty amazing, is all these little green things are little seedlings. This is a plant called a willow herb or epilobium, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them just starting off, growing on these little stalks. So these would have been last year's seed pods, and the seeds never left the pods, and now they're sprouting. You can see the roots down here on the bottom. Pretty amazing. So this is probably our least favorite animal here in the EP. This is a mosquito larva, and they're actually here in some abundance in this pond. And the eggs will hatch pretty much as soon as the ice leaves. But the good news is a lot of these salamanders in here will use them for food. All right, so we got a nice sunny spot here, and the mosquitoes are really enjoying this. Actually, so like a lot of the animals in these ephemeral ponds, they'll kind of gravitate towards the warmest part of the pond. We kind of have a nice south-facing opening here. And you can see it's just loaded with these mosquito larvae. There's some fairy shrimp in there too, but the mosquito larvae are really abundant. Probably about mid-May they'll come out, so we still have a couple weeks of what I like to call the honeymoon period of the year, when you can go out and still enjoy warm temperatures and not have mosquitoes. But things will change. So these are wood frogs, one of our earliest breeders. They start at the same time that spring peepers do. They have kind of a weird call, so they kind of sound like quacking ducks, like a rah, 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 rah. And they call more during the day, so they call it the warmest time of the day. And they can be quite beautiful. You can see here just a little bit of the variation. Sometimes they'll have a white stripe going down the back, but this nice reddish russet color is pretty striking on these guys. This one's a little bit more gray. And they're one of our most cold-tolerant amphibians. Like spring peepers, these guys can freeze totally solid. Where the salamanders have to go underground below the frost line, these guys can stay close to the surface. They can stay in the leaf litter and freeze solid. And they range all the way up north of the Arctic Circle in Canada and Alaska. So they're extremely adapted to living in a cold climate. And the name wood frog applies well here. They're definitely a forest dweller, mostly swamp forests here in the summertime. You don't see them in upland forest too much, so they tend to stick to wetland habitat. So as the ponds dry out, they tend to stay in the same sorts of areas. But up on the tundra, of course, there's no forest, but they can occupy that really cool habitat. And you can see that white lip right up above the mouth. That white stripe is pretty striking. That beautiful golden color in the eye too is pretty interesting. It's really striking. So we got something in this trap here. We got this little frog. And you recognize him by this small size, by the hint of barring cross on the back. This is a spring peeper, Pseudocris crucifer. This is our famous spring breeder that you hear go peep, 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 peep. And although I'm sure all of us have heard him, very few have actually seen what the frog looks like. And as you can see, they're not very big, just a little over an inch long. You can tell that this one is a male because of his throat pouch. You can see he's been expanding that. So when they do their peep call, they will inflate that throat pouch and then move the air back and forth between the throat pouch and their lungs. And as it goes over the vocal cords, that's when you hear that peep, 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 peep. And spring peepers are in the tree frog family. Actually, they do have sticky toe pads like other tree frogs, but we don't normally think of them as being an inhabitant of trees. They spend most of their time foraging in low vegetation for small insects in the summertime, but they don't typically venture up into trees. And they also have the longest breeding season of any of our amphibians. So some years they start as early as March, and you'll hear them as late as the end of June. But a peak calling period is probably the first third of that period. And the females will lay their eggs singly, so normally attached to a piece of plant material, and they're notoriously difficult to find. Their Latin name is Pseudocris crucifer. It refers to the cross across their back. If you look on the understory, or oh, there's his throat pouch. You see that? You inflated it for a minute. That's what they'll do when they're calling. You can see the muscles in the legs, and also that yellow coloration that's pretty typical of spring peepers.
So, hop out of the car, get off the trail, take a look below the surface. You never know what you'll learn. .906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing bait enoch. As the beginning of April rolls around, if you've got a rod, a reel, and a boat, you're no doubt itching to get on the water. One of the first places you can do that is on the stretch of water that forms the border between the UP and Wisconsin, the Menominee River. I was heading out for a quick evening on the water with Brian Clairmont of BAC Guide Service and Lure Lipstick Pro staffer Kevin Dempsey in search of brown trout.
It's been a long winter, but we've been doing pretty good on some browns, and we've been getting a few walleyes.
The day before, Brian was dragging a smaller boat across the ice to open water at this same landing.
What we're doing is we're doing about 1 to 1.5 against the current. The current's probably doing 2 or 3 that way. So when you get a strike, hang on to the rod. The browns have just been inhaling it, so you'll know right away if you got a brown cap. If it's a walleye, they're kind of sluggish yet because the water's really cold. But we've been having a blast. First time out in a bigger boat too. Feels pretty good. This is what we're running today. Size 11 Rapala, perch colored, BAC style, red hook in the front with a clip with the BAC walleye leader, but we're gonna call it the BAC walleye / brown trout leader because we've been catching both. And that's a piece of lead core with a piece of fluorocarbon. And this is how I fish this. I'll give it just a little cast out downstream, a little bit of line out. Click my bail. When you click your bail, always make sure your line goes in right there where the roller bearing is, because see how it's sitting there? If you had a big fish hit that right now, you have a good chance of breaking your line. So just grab your line, go like that, pops right in there, see how nice that is? That's what you want, because now when you get a fish on there, it'll roll. If it's not on that roller bearing, your line will pinch, break off. That's our tip of the day. Anyway, with these, about 1.5, and I cast it out. And when I do, I'll go a little ways and I'll let a little bit more line out. Because we're fishing anywhere from 4 to 10 feet of water here. And I can get this bait down around 6-7 feet. But I'll run it like this. I'll let a little bit more line out as we go to let the fish tell me what depth they want that bait at. Where they're holding, how far they'll chase. And instead of just sitting here holding my rod, trolling like this, I like to pump the rod. Pump it forward, let it slide back. But there's a million ways to do this. Sometimes fast, you gotta do it a bunch of different ways so the fish will tell you what kind of mood they're in.
I'm gonna freshen this up here, Clairmont. Tex Dempsey here, Lure Lipstick, up here with fellow pro staffer, Brian Clairmont with BAC Guide Service up in Marinette here. I'm gonna run this chapstick right along both sides of this bait. And I'm gonna tip these hooks a little bit, just to give it a little extra. I always like to say more is better, you know, unless it's in the tavern, of course, but that's all it is. What that's going to do is that's going to leave yourself a scent trail in the water. The fish swims across that trail, he comes up on that scent trail, and he's going to want to attack that bait. Fish pheromone, everybody. Good stuff. I love it. I love it for every species of fish that I've used so far. I like the chapstick on your crankbaits, for sure.
I swear by this stuff, Lure Lipstick, especially these hard baits like this, a little bit of scent on it just makes a big difference. And all you gotta do is just rub that on like that and ready to go. For these browns, I don't know what it is, but as far as the ice is where the fish like to sit, right on that edge. I don't know how many I've caught 20 yards under the ice. And then if you're going too fast, them fish try to come up, they hit the bottom of the ice, they'll pull the hooks out. But they like to hang on that edge of that ice. I don't know why. I got a brown. Ooh, it feels like a pretty good one. Took a little while, but you just gotta keep at her. I know them fish are here. If I know they're here, there's a way to catch them. Wait, it's slapping back and forth. Ooh, it's a nice one too. Pull and drag. Oh, maybe it's a rainbow. Oh, it's brown. Beautiful. That's what we're looking for. There we go. Had to switch colors. Nice male, little hook on the jaw. That's what we're out here looking for right now. I always start with the browns and then the walleyes. Gotta love it, gotta love it. Lure Lipstick, baby.
.906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store.
We're up here trying to get some brown trout on a Menominee and some walleyes. We picked up one brown today so far, tonight, and one walleye so far. So the night is young, and we'll see what else we got you see what else has to offer us for today. Now I want to ask you now, okay, now, for everybody out there, we're running floating Rapalas, okay? Now typically these are gonna run 4 to 6 feet, correct, Ryan? Okay, so now, by adding this 18 inches to 2 feet of this lead core, what is that lead core going to do for the depth of this bait? Is that going to give it a foot, 2 feet? How much do you think that's going to give this bait?
I did that lead core for that reason, to try to bring that bait down a little bit deeper. And I think that lead core probably is only about a difference of 6 to 8 inches. But this is what this turned into. When we're pulling this lure, like, you know, we're pulling it, sure, you know, making it speed up and stuff, with that lead core on there, it gives that bait a whole different action when you go back. Where if you put a split shot on there, what that split shot kills your action. And anytime you do any different thing there, split shot or different clip, like you like that clip there, see it's got a big curve in it? Yep. So that Rapala can swing in there good. Like I said, I think that might do it, that piece of lead core 6 to 8 inches deeper, but it's all when you're pulling it, the action. And like I said, any little thing you do between here and your line, you know this, it changes your action in your lure.
Correct.
So, while you're trolling with this now, first time ever, you can really feel that Rapala wiggling, right?
Sure.
So you know it's working. Again, when you're fishing, little things you do make a world of difference. It does. Fish on! This might be a walleye. I don't know here, let's see. See, it's really slow for a little while, but you just gotta wait him out. It runs in spurts, because it didn't take too long to get in there and fish. I gotta release this one anyway. that. Don't even get them in the net. I'll just grab them. And we get a few little walleyes too. Nice little male. I already caught my male for today, so I'm gonna let this one go. But that's a nice little eater if you're gonna eat them. It's just the beginning. It's my favorite time of the year.
Well, that's about it for this week. I'll leave you now with some of the sights and sounds of spring in the UP. Be sure to watch next week. We'll be back with Ryne for a look at salamanders. Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up to get on the 906 Outdoors email list. We'll send you an occasional email with tips, recipes, and more. You'll also be eligible for giveaways just for being on the list. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.